Hey everybody, Scott Conant here. Welcome to my home. We are cooking together. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Today we are going to make a cauliflower and fresh chili zeppole. This zeppole, you may be familiar with sweet zeppole, something of a tradition, particularly in New Orleans known as a beignet, in Italy known as a zeppole. What we're going to do today is make a savory version. We're going to talk about the yeasted dough and how to make that, how to let it rest. Talk about the cauliflower that we put in that makes it a craveable zeppole. We're also going to put some fresh chilies inside. We're going to add some crispy garlic to it, and we're going to serve it over a bed of Parmesan cheese, which is great to dip those delicious, crunchy, crispy zeppole inside as you eat them. And believe me, it's going to be one of those things that you're not going to be able to get enough of. You're going to want to eat them like popcorn. So before you begin, if you could start with a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, as well as a plate with some paper towels on it. We are going to start with the dough itself because it's going to have to rise in proof for about an hour. So here I have some dry yeast. I'm going to add it to some warm water, and we're just going to let that sit for 3 or 4 minutes or so. While that is kind of starting to activate that yeast, I have about 2 1/4 cups of flour here also, and I'm going to add about half a teaspoon of kosher salt to that also. So that will mix up together nicely. We are also going to have, later on, we have some fresh chili. We're going to make those garlic chips. We're going to roast the cauliflower. All kinds of good stuff happening here. It's all taking place. So let's see. Here we go. I'm going to open this up. This yeast, I'm going to add the flour first. I have a dough hook on this mixer. I'm going to let it go nice and slow, just stirring it together. And I am going to add this warm water with the yeast in it. Just going to let that kind of come together there. Nice. I'm going to add this nice and slowly. Now this dough is going to be a little bit wet, not like what you would consider a traditional dough by any means. It's really important that this is able to, we're able to mix other ingredients inside this dough. So this isn't like, this isn't something, if your yeast starts to stick on the bottom like that, I use my finger to get it all mixed together. Nice. And again, this is going to proof once it comes together for about an hour and a half or so. There we go. And I got a little bit residual here. I'm going to add a little bit, just a touch more, just to get those other pieces here. And add that. Okay. So it was 1 cup and 2 tablespoons what we added inside there. Once it comes together, we don't want to mix it too much. It's just coming together. I don't want to mix it too much. I don't want to develop those gluten strands because it'll make it a little bit too tough. So it's just enough to bring it together, and then later on we will add some oil to it. We'll add some cauliflower and fresh chilies and all this kind of stuff. So you see that it is just coming together here. So again, just enough so it comes together. You can see just a lightly sticky, not too bad, not too much. This is something my aunts and grandmothers used to make all the time. So it was something kind of close to the heart. I'm going to cover that in plastic. Okay, all good. In the meantime, what we're going to do, because that takes an hour to proof, we have the cauliflower here. This takes about 40 minutes to roast or so. So I want to make sure that we get that going as well. Now, when I cut cauliflower, I think it's really important to kind of maintain the natural look of the cauliflower. So what I like to do is just go around the outside, cut those stems just like I'm doing here, and just kind of take them away so I can get access to the other bits of the cauliflower. So I'll kind of cut that stem right there and then just twist and let it fall. So, and then this is important because we want to get these as small as possible. So we will continue to cut down and twist and turn the cauliflower so it all makes sense. I don't want to chop this because, as I said, I like the integrity of the actual cauliflower itself and the way it looks. So you could see that I'm turning this, constantly turning it, twisting away those kind of little cauliflower florets, little lobes of cauliflower. And as I get in here, when it comes to something a little bit smaller like this, I like to cut them and again, twist them so that it still shows that natural shape of the cauliflower, right? They're not chopped up. They're just really showcasing it's just little, I think it's little things like that, you know, sometimes you're the only one who notices, but you know you're doing it the right way. And for me, that's important, especially when it comes to all things, I guess. So particularly with food here. So I'm just going to get in there, break these down. It's a little bit tedious, but there's not a lot to do. It's only half a head of cauliflower. So we're going to get in there, cut them all up. If at any point we start going a little bit too fast, you can press pause and catch up and then unpause us. Really easy. One of the benefits of the Food Network kitchen. Here we go. Still cutting these cauliflower florets down into smaller pieces. Again, twisting, not cutting them per se, just enough to kind of get through those little stems and twisting like that as well. You could use a paring knife for it. You might even be able to do a lot of this by hand without a knife if you feel like it. So totally up to you. All right, almost done. When this is finished, what we're going to do is toss these with a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, and pop them in a 375-degree oven. And they're going to go for about, 40 minutes or so. All right, so that is all set. Oh, here's another piece. I just found another piece sneaking up on me. Cutting those pieces again, twisting and cutting. Good stuff. All right, these are done. And you can see that they're all pretty consistent. If there's some larger ones, you can go back in and break them down into smaller bits. Same thing. Good. And you know what I like to do? I like to seasonalize these zeppole also. They don't have to be cauliflower. Sometimes I can, in the summertime, I'll use corn. In the autumn, I can use butternut squash. Sometimes I'll make a puree and fill the zeppole when they come out, of the fryer, so that they have a different texture once you bite them into them. Okay, so cauliflower in a bowl, all good. Let me get rid of this other stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, I love to seasonalize this. I think it's always fun. I could use peas and tarragon in the spring. As I said, corn, butternut squash, pumpkin even in the autumn. As you get around the holidays, obviously a lot of the vegetables start going out of season. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. I'm just going to toss them together like this so everything is well coated. All right. I have this sheet tray with some parchment paper on it. And I have this on 375 in a convection oven. If you don't have a convection oven at home, obviously you can go about, between 35 to 50 degrees higher without a convection oven because it doesn't have that circulation of air. So it's always important to have that. Okay, next thing, we are going to do the chilies. I have a glove in my pocket. I do have a glove in my pocket. I want to cut these jalapenos. I'm just going to remove the seeds from these jalapenos so that they don't overwhelm people when you make them. Depends on you. If you like the seeds in there, keep the seeds. I'm just going to open it up and very carefully take out those seeds right here. All good. just a nice added depth of flavor with this fresh chili. All right, so I'm going to chop this up fine. And I'm going to reserve it on the side. Again, that cauliflower is roasting. The dough itself of the zeppole is proofing. I'm going to chop these up in perfect little fine dice. All right. Beautiful. Okay. Chilies are here. I'm going to chop up the capers also. Another nice briny depth of flavor for these zeppole when you fry them. Good stuff. All right, that is chopped up nicely. Okay, good stuff. So this is out of the way, done. The next thing we're gonna get to is slicing this garlic, and then we will fry it. It's a good technique, this crispy garlic. I like to utilize this in a lot of different recipes. Here, what I'm using here is a truffle slicer. I'm gonna slice these garlic cloves nice and thin, almost so you can see through them, right? They're really nice and thin. I got about 6 of these here. Obviously, if you don't have a truffle slicer, you could use a Japanese mandolin if you have that. If you don't have a Japanese mandolin, you could do it with a razor blade, like in the movies. You could do it with a really sharp knife also. Just try to get them as thin as you can. The reason why I'm using a truffle slicer here is I like the consistency of it like this. I like to be able to do this and make sure that everything is very consistent. It's going to fry up uniform. It's going to have a really nice crispiness to it. What we're going to do is start this in cold oil. I have it in olive oil. I'm going to utilize that cold oil. We're going to bring it up to temperature nice and slowly until it starts to get hot, and then you're going to start to see that all those garlic chips dance around in the hot oil. I also prefer a truffle slicer. I cut myself less personally on a truffle slicer than I do on a Japanese mandolin for whatever reason. I think we all have that one piece of equipment in our kitchen that every time you pull it out of a drawer, it's like, oh my God, I got to use this thing again. I know I'm going to cut myself. That is a Japanese mandolin for me. I look at it and I cut myself. So even when I use it and I don't cut myself, when I put it away, I tend to nick myself. So it always happens. Okay, in this oil, the oil is cold. I'm going to use a medium-low heat, nice and slow. I'm going to take these garlic chips and I'm just going to put them directly inside this oil. There we go. Mix it around. And slowly, what you'll see when it starts coming up to temperature is that they'll start to kind of dance around a little bit. And I like this technique because the oil is also seasoned, but also very flavorful. So you could utilize it in other recipes. So there's a couple different, there's a method to the madness, so to speak. All right, so garlic, done. Then we are going to chop up a little bit of parsley. I have about a half a cup of parsley or so. I have a bunch of stuff here. I like having it out in water so that it's nice and crisp, very fresh, and ready to utilize. Use this part of the board here. And what I like to do is exactly this, get all the components of the dish together, get them ready to be assembled while, again, that dough is proofing as the as the dough is proofing and as the cauliflower is roasting. That way, when we're ready to do this, it's all done and we could just assemble and start to cook again. All right, so good stuff. All right. Seems pretty straightforward so far, right? I hope no one has any questions or concerns so far. You could see this garlic starting to fry up nice. That's what I meant when I said it was going to start to dance as it came up to temperature, and that's exactly what it's doing. You see how it's starting to fry up nicely. On the side here, I have a slotted spoon with some paper towels. I like to get it nice and, I move it around a touch so that these garlic chips aren't sticking. See that? Just so and you can hear that sizzle. And if you could smell, I mean, the smell is absolutely delicious. It's just good stuff. And if you look, I have the heat on about a medium-low heat. It's not too high at all because I really don't want it. I don't want this to go too fast. I don't want them to cook too quickly. By cooking them nice and slow like this, they will get a nice, uniform, beautiful crispiness, golden crispiness to them. Good. And what we'll do is allow that oil to cool. So we'll use the crispy garlic chips in the dough, and we'll also use some of this same oil inside the dough. So while that is proofing, while the dough is proofing, this oil will also be cooling. While the cauliflower is roasting, also the oil is cooling. So we're doing multiple things at the same time, which just allows us great utilization of that time frame. There we go. Coming together nicely. Delicious. I have this oil here. I want it to be at about 375. It's at 380, which isn't bad. So as we start to add things to this oil, obviously that temperature is going to drop significantly. So we don't want to overcrowd this pot. I got about a quart of that canola oil inside there. I've also used grapeseed oil. I've used peanut oil to fry. I mean, it's really a personal preference more than anything else. All right, you see these starting to crisp up, starting to turn golden. We don't want them to go too far. Also, we don't want this oil to get too hot because the hotter the oil, obviously the flavor starts to dissipate or it gets too smoky, and we want to stay away from that as well. So oil's coming together. The chips are done. I'm going to start to remove them. Again, a slotted spoon over paper towels, and they will get nice and they'll dry out nicely and get nice and crunchy. See how beautiful those look? All right, that's done. Oil is off. I'm going to allow this to cool in a separate part of the stove so that it's all good. Okay. You could already feel these starting to crisp up nicely. Good stuff. All right. That's what we needed. All right. So we have all our components. I think we're all set and ready to assemble this momentarily. Why don't you let your cauliflower finish cooking and let your dough rest the rest of the way, and I'll meet you back here in about 25 minutes or so. All right, so we are back. We have the Zeppole dough, which is properly proofed. It's been sitting for about an hour now. We have the cauliflower that's been roasted. I have chopped parsley, chopped fresh chilies here, some chopped capers. I have the garlic chips. I have the garlic oil that we had cooked the garlic chips in, cooled down here. I have the oil, which is about 370 degrees. We're ready to assemble. Now, how do you know that this Zeppole dough is done? It's a good question. So you can see that it's about doubled in size. You can feel the, there's a lack of resistance here. There's a softness to it. You could see how these, if you can get in really close, you could see how that is, all those gluten, that's the gluten right there, those strands. That's the gluten inside the dough, which holds the structure together for what this dough is. So that is been sitting for about an hour. It's nicely mixed. I'm going to add all these ingredients here. And if they get crushed up a little bit, that's, you know, it's all good. That's what we want. So we'll add some parsley here. We have the fresh chili. We have the caper. We're going to add all that. We have the roasted cauliflower as well. You can see how this zeppole is coming together here. It is a little different, right? And we're going to add a good tablespoon or so of this oil. I might even add 2 because this oil, I fried it in extra virgin olive oil, and I love the flavor that we have here. So, all right, and I'm just going to mix this around and incorporate all those ingredients. And what's going to happen is, look at that. That's a thing of beauty. Just mix them over, and the oil is really going to help with the texture of this also. So it's all inside here. You can see that oil adding to it. We don't want to add any more flour to this. If it's a little wet, that's actually going to be fine because you're going to deep fry it anyway. So all good. Let me just get in there. Just mix it up a little bit, incorporate those flavors, make sure the flavors are all consistently uniform throughout. All right, and you could even let this rest. You know, what I like to do sometimes if I know I have company coming later, I'll make this in the afternoon and let it sit for a couple hours at room temperature again, and then I'll get back in there with a couple of spoons, which I'll show you momentarily. It allows that dough to kind of soften up a little bit. Doughs get a little tense when you work with them. Clearly, they get a little tense, a little stressed. So you want them to kind of relax. You want it to be nice and chill. So, you know, have a glass of wine, take it easy before your company comes, before you have any guests over, and then it'll be ready to fry up. So I'm going to double check this fryer oil again. One of the challenges of doing this without, in commercial kitchens, obviously we have these fryers. This is about 384 right now. It's a little warm. So I'm just, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of adjusting the flame, I'm just going to move it to the side so that if you notice, I have like half of the flame on, half of the flame off. All right, so I'm going to take a good tablespoon of this. Again, there we go. And I'm just gonna, you don't have to shape it. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You can even just pull it and then just deep fry it just like that in the oil. I have these memories as a kid of walking around these carnivals that we used to have in Connecticut where I grew up, and zeppole were always something that we would always stop and get at these, these festivals and stuff. So I just have very fond memories of those things. So if I can turn those memories into an experience as a chef or as someone who entertains at home, it's also a nice thing to be able to do. So I always like that, and I could share that with my family, and so they know my point of view with some of these things also. See the way they're poofing up nicely? I want to make sure that I'm flipping them so that there's a consistency in the fry as well. We don't want one half to get cooked and the other half not cooked. So if you notice, I'm kind of cutting that dough a little bit when I get in the bowl here, cutting it with the spoon. I could also shape it a little bit with my fingers and just frying it up like that. So you get the hint. While that is frying, that's enough for now. As I said, I don't want to overcrowd that. All right, I have this plate here. I don't want to get these paper towels too close, obviously, to the flame. I'm just going to flip them over. Make sure that, as I said, they're nice and consistent. All right. So they're still frying up nicely. I'm going to allow them to cool momentarily. While those are frying, I have some chopped chives. I have some of the leftover chopped parsley here. I didn't use it all. For me, one of the most cathartic things to do is to chop really nice fresh chives that are dry, and it just get that perfect sliver, razor thin with a good knife. Okay, so that's done. Little chive. These are frying up. I'm going to flip these one more time. Oh yeah. So some of the first ones I can pull out now. Look how fun this is. Beautiful. So, how I like to serve these. I like to take some Parmesan cheese, grate it fresh on the plate. And again, if you have a little aioli, if you have a little cauliflower puree just lying around your house, I know a lot of people do that, you can have some of that, kind of squirt them in the inside, or you can serve them in the middle of this plate so that, good, that's nice. Those are just finishing. I'm going to take a little bit of this parsley, a little bit of those chives. Good. Wipe the edge of this plate nicely. And it's a great finger food for your friends and family in the holidays, so that it's just a little bit different, but a little familiar and a little bit just enough different at the same time to make it a little bit interesting for everyone. So these are the cauliflower and fresh chili zeppole, served over a little bit of some Parmesan cheese. See the way that picks up? Just a beautiful bite. Oh yeah. It's exactly what we want them to be. You get a little hint of that chili, the beautiful cauliflower flavor, the texture of the dough itself, which is fried nicely. Good bit of cheese on that. A little pop of acid from the capers. These are great. I'm shocked. These are delicious. I hope you enjoy making them as much as I do, and I love serving them to my family and friends, and I hope this becomes something new in your repertoire, so to speak.